Hello, I'm Priscilla Titus, Land Conservancy staff ecologist, and I'm here at the College Lodge Forest with my husband John.
Hello.
We plan to lead you in a wildflower walk this weekend, but due to COVID, we can't be together in person at the forest. But you can come back on your own, and we thought we would show you. We're going to be on this red trail, which is also known as the Darwin Trail in the beginning. This spring has been a little bit unpredictable with some big fluctuations in temperatures and some pretty heavy rainstorms and windstorms, so we're not sure what we'll see today. But if you follow along, you can come back later on and see some of the plants that we mentioned that might not be in flower today. So here's the beginning of our hike. This is the Darwin Trail. It's blazed in red and also has these wonderful trail markers thanks to Calder Anir for his Eagle Scout project. And you can see that the beginning of this trail is just east of the parking lot across from the main lodge. So let's get started.
Hello. We've only walked about 50 feet down the trail so far, and we've already seen a number of spring ephemeral flowers. And we're going to start out with this one, and this is called Downy Yellow Violet, because of course it's yellow, and then the downy is because it's a little bit hairy. So this is a stemmed violet, unlike many of our other violets, because you can see how the leaves come off of this stem instead of coming directly out of the rhizome at the ground surface. And this, like all violets, you can see has nectar rays. That is the stripes pointing insects towards where the nectar is. Of course, when the insect gets the nectar, then it's also going to get rubbed with pollen, which it will carry to another flower. The nectar is in the back of this spur. You can see there that little bump at the end. And some violets have much longer spurs than others. So when the insect wants that nectar, it's got to go deep in there. So we have 12 violet species in New York State. And they flower in the spring, but they flower at different times throughout the spring. So we always have at least a couple of violets that are flowering. Now we are at this wonderful outdoor classroom dedicated to Willard Stanley, a former biology professor at SUNY Fredonia. And surrounding this amphitheater here is a really interesting plant called Sarsaparilla. You can see there's many Sarsaparilla stems here, and the leaves are here in this cluster of 3 compound leaves at the top, and at the bottom you can see this cluster of 3 balls of white flower buds. It's not flowering yet, and this plant has a whole host of folkloric medicinal uses. Extracts from the rhizomes were used by snake oil salesmen to concoct medicines that were purported to cure almost everything. So come back in a week or two, and hopefully you will see it flowering at that time. We are at the first trail junction, and from here we will proceed to the right. At this trail junction, there is a very nice small population of sweet white violet here, and you can definitely see how it's got its name. It's also next to the unusual leaf of a lion's foot, which will flower much later in the summer. On our way down the hill, we passed quite a few different plant species. The main one was Canada May Lily, which will flower in about 2 weeks. We also saw partridge berry with its bright red berries, and wake robin or red trillium, and painted trillium. We will talk about some of these later in the walk. We are at the next trail junction where we will be taking a left. This is where the Darwin Trail and the Leopold Trail come together. And we'll be sticking with the red Darwin Trail for now. This trail junction is distinctive because there is a number of very large black cherries here. And also, we are at the edge of the old growth patch at the College Lodge Forest, which is just down the hill here with some very large trees. And also, down the hill there, I have a forest research plot where I have been measuring tree diameters and assessing understory species for more than 8 years. Also here and down the hill, there are a number of other wildflower species. The ones that are down the hill, we won't see today because we'll be sticking to the trail.
This is one of my favorite spots on the Red Trail, this little bridge that crosses this tiny stream because it's extremely diverse. There are these dry slopes coming down the hill we just walked down and this floodplain, so you get both species that like dry conditions and species that thrive in wet conditions. We have 2 of our 7 violet species here, both the Downy yellow violet and common blue violet. There's waterleaf, which is not quite in flower yet, and blue cohosh that has pretty much finished already this spring. These flowers that you see everywhere are cutleaf toothwort. Down in the stream bottom, you'll see the big leaves of skunk cabbage. Over to the left, there's a large population of mayapple. And on the other side of the stream, we see some plants that we don't see on the side I just showed you. There are a couple of Actea species coming up. This is both red baneberry and doll's eyes. And I can't really tell one from the other until they're flowering or in fruit. There's some turtle head here. This is one of my favorite native buttercups. It's called kidney leaf buttercup because the basal leaves are slightly kidney shaped. And if you pan around, you can see there's a lot of trilliums. I believe there's some squirrel corn near here somewhere. There's both false Solomon seal and true Solomon seal in this area, and dwarf ginseng, and quite a number of other species. We're going to give you some close-ups here soon, but if you come to this spot, please try to spend at least 15 minutes exploring here. You won't regret it.
Now I'm going to tell you about a couple of our woody species. And here we have running strawberry bush, or Euonymus abovatus. And you can tell this because it runs along the ground. It has green stems, and later on it'll flower, and then it has bright red fruits. And that's where the name strawberry bush came from. And if we go up the hill a bit here, here we have our native honeysuckle, Canada honeysuckle, which you are really lucky to have a lot of this at the College Lodge Forest, because it's disappeared from most areas because of Eurasian honeysuckle. So hopefully we can find this flowering later on in this walk. There's also a lot of dwarf ginseng in the same patch here with the Canada honeysuckle. We are still in Priscilla's favorite site by the creek, and there's a lot more plants here that we found. We can only talk about a few of them, but right here I have Jack in the Pulpit, and this is a really interesting plant, and you can see it has this spathe here and inside there's a spadix. And on this spadix will be many, many, many small flowers, which you can't really see quite yet. An interesting thing about this plant is that it will be male or female depending on moisture and resource availability, basically how strong the plant is. If the plant is feeling strong, it'll be a female because it takes more resources to produce the fruits than it does a male. So Jack in the Pulpit will switch back and forth between male and female. So this will be pollinated by flies and beetles, which are attracted to the scent. And we have another member of the same plant family across the creek. There's a skunk cabbage, and this is all done flowering now because this is the first plant to flower in the year. It often flowers in February when there's still snow on the ground. And the way it does that is that it generates its own heat by using a unique metabolic pathway that is based upon aspirin or salicylic acid. So it generates heat, melts the snow, and attracts early season insects that way. On the creek, there is a small population of squirrel corn here with this really beautiful foliage and very unique flowers, which are similar to bleeding hearts, which you might know. And there are much larger populations of squirrel corn elsewhere in the College Lodge forest. This plant got its name because if we were to expose the roots, you would see bright orange nodules, much loved by squirrels as a food source. We stopped at this point because this is a trail junction between the red and green trails. We're going to leave the red trail momentarily to visit the bird blind and look at the marsh. And at this trail junction is gold thread in the buttercup family, and you might have seen larger populations of this as you walk down the hill. And you know this is in the buttercup family because of the large numbers of beautiful stamens. So this plant got its name because the underground stems or rhizomes are bright gold in color. So this plant often will live in pretty dense shade. Nearby is a painted trillium, very distinctive flower. And even when it's not flowering, you'll know it's painted trillium because of the little extension there between the leaf and the stem. This is called a petiole. And the other two trillium species at the College Lodge do not have this. The third species that we have here that just emerged recently is Indian cucumber. So over the next few weeks, it'll grow taller and have another ring of leaves, and then it'll get a flower which droops below the leaves. So look for that. We're in luck. On our way to the bird blind, we found a native honeysuckle, which is in flower. And you can see that it gets a pair of flowers dangling below the leaves. So here is the bird blind above this beautiful high quality marsh. And if you come here, spend some time because we get a lot of bird species here which are utilizing the resources of the marsh and the forest. So also...
Oh, John.
We also surprised a basking snake here, which if we're lucky, we can get on film. And there's quite a few plant species here as well. If you come here later in the year, you'll see flowering gentian and buttonbush and a host of other plants on the edge of the marsh. And then over there is the last flowering serviceberry tree. They're wrapping it up for the season and will begin to produce fruit. we left the bird blind and we're back on the red trail now. And we crossed one bridge and we're just about to cross another. Before we cross that bridge, I wanted to show you a few plants. Here is a bead lily. This is a far northern species and we're on the southern edge of its range. It's very nice to see it. And in the summertime, it'll have small lily-like flowers. What's most distinctive is that the fruit is a large blue berry elevated above the ground. There's also a host of other plants here, such as partridge berry, gold thread, Indian cucumber, and others. So let's go ahead and walk across the bridge now. This gives us a great view into the swamp. And you can see on the hummocks, there's some of the spring flowers that you already know, along with sphagnum moss.
Nice tip-up mound.
And of course, a lot of skunk cabbage. And here we have a swamp saxifrage just about to flower with this very tall flowering shoot. So that'll be flowering very soon. And here we have a marsh violet. You can see how it gets this darker purple color inside the lighter purple, adapted to wet conditions.
Here's some turtle head, not quite in flower yet. Gotta come back for that one.
We are at another trail junction and we'll be taking a right here. And this is where the green trail comes in and joins the red. And both trails are together for a little while. And at this spot up the hill is one of the nicest old growth hemlock populations with some very large hemlocks that are older than 300 years old. And up that hill there, I do have another forest research plot. At this point, we have some marshland and upland coming together. And one thing that we find here is this nice understory tree called red elderberry. Unlike black elderberry, this grows more in the shade, and the fruits are poisonous to humans, but they are much loved by wildlife. To walk here, we crossed over 2 boardwalks, and you can see a third here. And this was another Eagle Scout project, and we are so grateful to these projects that protect the wetland resources along the trail. Remember this spot from the beginning of our walk. This is where the green Leopold Trail and the red Darwin Trail separate. And you also might recognize the large cherries that surround us. And so we're heading back to the parking lot now, but stay tuned for one more plant species. Almost back at the parking lot, and we are in a patch of periwinkle, which is a attractive but non-native species from the Mediterranean, and it's highly aggressive. And so it has evergreen leaves and these distinctive purple flowers. And this thing spreads by underground stems or rhizomes. And because it's extremely aggressive, it will take over areas and eliminate the native plants. This probably got here from the landscaping that was around the lodge before people knew what a problem this was. You can see that here in this area, a violet and a baneberry and a lily are still hanging on. But if left unchecked, periwinkle will eliminate the native species. So I do have a periwinkle removal project with students each fall as time allows. And this also points out the critical importance of good land management to control these invasive species so that we will be able to have all those native species that you have seen on this walk today.
Hi, we're back at the kiosk. I just wanted to show you, here's the loop that we did. And you can see it's just a small part of the trail system here. So if you come back, you can do our wildflower hike, or you can explore the other trails on your own. There's so many to choose from. We're really grateful you joined us here today. We hope you enjoyed this virtual presentation, and if you can, we hope you'll join us in protecting this land permanently so that we can meet here next spring for an in-person wildflower walk. I also wanted to mention that on the back of this kiosk there's a sign-in notebook where you can leave us some comments. There's also a QR code if you'd rather just scan that to sign in. And also, if you like the video, please let us know and we'll consider doing a follow-up video a little later this spring when some other things come into flower. There are dozens of plants we didn't have time to show you today that we'd love to share with you. Enjoy this beautiful spring. Thank you and bye.